goes a little something like. I ain't got no tea, but if I did, it would be hot. Oh no, I ain't got no tea, but if I did, it would be hot.
Hello, everybody. I am Britt Ryderly, and this is my lovely co-host.
I'm KaShay. Hey, y'all.
So, if you're on my channel, you probably know who I be, but in case you don't, I am Britt. This is my channel, Britt Ryderly. It is a book and author tube where I talk about the intersections of literature and culture. I share some occasional original content like poetry. I am on a summer schedule right now, so I'm not doing as much of that. And then I do book talks. I talk about my writing journey, and then whatever else comes up within that like catch of literature and culture and how they coexist and influence each other. And I will let my lovely co-host KaShay introduce herself and give you a quick spiel about her channel that you should definitely follow if you're not already.
Like I said, my name is KaShay. My channel is ShayWithThaHobbies. I write short stories, poetry, and the rarely occasional blog post at this point. But I've been working on one this week, so it should go up eventually. So my channel, we just do writing sprints. I like to talk about books when I get the chance. It's really just about my hobbies. I crochet, I knit, I do a bunch of stuff. So if you like what you see today, come check me out. I guarantee we'll have a good time.
100%. 100%. Definitely go subscribe to KaShay if you haven't, if you do like what you see. So you're missing on nobody's ratings. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to.
Right, yeah, nah. And if you don't like me, I'm not your cup of tea. Everything ain't for everybody.
Amen. But if you do hit that big red button and want to be our internet friends, please engage the content. Amen. Okay, so today we are going to talk about critique partners. We're going to talk about what are critique partners. We're going to talk about choosing critique partners, growing relationships with critique partners, and really how to get the most out of that relationship. Okay, so first, what is a critique partner? Shay, what is a critique partner?
So when I first was like getting into the YouTube writing authorship like scene and whatnot, what I was taught was that, and I say taught like not like a teacher, but like from like conversations and whatnot, was that a critique partner was someone else who was like either around the same area of writing that you are, like level wise or above, so that you guys are like kind of like compatible, like you're in the same journey, and you swap your work and critique it, and by critique it, like you talk about what's good, but you also talk about what's bad. You talk about like where it can grow, and that was like kind of the extent of what I like my initial knowledge of what a critique partner was.
Right. So it's same. Critique partners, you exchange work with the agreement that like you're exchanging work, right? Like not someone just giving you their work and you reading it, not you just giving someone your work and them reading it. It's an exchange. And we'll talk about the importance of that ethic of critique partners, that it's always an exchange. There should be a spirit of mutuality in that relationship. But for now, suffice to say, the definition that KaShay gave us of it is someone with whom you form a partnership, critique partner, you form a partnership with where you are agreeing to exchange work. And that person is even if they're not writing right now, like the book that you're swapping right now or the project or whatever that you're swiping isn't in the same genre, they know the conventions of that genre. It makes no sense you have a critique partner who does not write in or know anything about the genre that you write in. Like y'all need to be compatible in genres. Okay, so we'll talk more about the critique partners in a second, but sticking a pin in that, I often hear people ask what the difference between critique partners and beta readers are. And so briefly, we're going to define beta readers, which is simply this. Beta readers are people who read your book before it is published and who provide you feedback on how it can grow, and who can say, like, I really like this part here. Like, here is my, not a review, but like, here is sort of how I received it. The things that are great and the things that need improvement, right? So the difference, though, between a beta reader and a critique partner is that there's a different level of engagement. A critique partner is a writer, right? So they're going to be engaging with your work from a craft perspective, like, hey, some of these sentences are like the exact same structure that's a bit repetitive, the reader might get bored, or this character that their backstory seems a little flat, right? Like, they're going to help you with the craft parts of writing. The assumption is not that a beta reader would be able to do, or even not even be able to, because you can have a beta reader who is also a writer, but if you're only asking them to beta read, they're not going to try to engage you from a craft perspective, because they're trying to tell you from a reader's perspective what I'm getting from it. So they might not say these sentences all start the same way, so it's boring, but they may just say the writing was boring in this section. They don't have to give you a craft explanation of why that might be, right? And so there's also like more engagement with the critique partner. KaShay and I meet weekly. We talk all the time, but like professionally, we meet like on a weekly basis. I may call her like, hey, can you talk right now? And just talk through an idea with her real quick. And she's always free to do the same thing for me. I'm not going to be bothering a beta reader that much. I'm going to give them the book once. And if they say they're open to read a rewrite, then, you know, I will graciously accept if I want to, or I'm open to, or whatever. But a beta reader may read your thing like once or twice, but they're not going to read it as much as a critique partner. So that's the general set of differences between a critique partner and a beta reader. KaShay, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was gonna add the other thing is, especially as you're like looking for critique partners versus beta readers, something that I was like again taught was that beta readers are usually readers of that genre, so they're going to have like a deeper like understanding of the genre. They're going to, it's not just going to be a craft thing, it's for the enjoyment of the book. So they're going to tell you a lot more about like, oh, I like this. When it's with the critique partner, it's not necessarily about like and dislike, it's more so about what works and what doesn't work, what pushes the story forward. And so like I think like you were saying, like if you can look at them as two different types of people, then it helps. Not saying that writers can't be beta readers, not saying readers can't be critique partners. You know, whatever works for you works for you. But if you are thinking of that, like, hey, when I'm looking for beta readers, I'm looking for people that read in the genre, that know it, it might make that process a little bit easier for you.
Okay, so now that we have that fundamental difference to go forward with, um, let's talk about something really, really important, which is like trust with critique partners. And I've heard before people say, I don't have a critique partner, even though I've been writing for years, because I just can't imagine trusting someone with my writing. And I think that is the crux of a critique partnership. You have to trust them. If I did not trust KaShay, she would not have my work, period. And it's interesting because it was in one of your Thursday night write chats that I saw one of your subscribers saying like, yeah, like I haven't because of trust. And someone else commented, a writer who is self-published and has written much, was like, oh, you know, you could like you could watermark it, you could do this thing where you like pay $15 to like have it pre-registered, something like that. Those things are true, I'm sure. But for me, if I feel the need to do all of that before I send it to you, I'm not sending it to you. because there's always a way for someone to work around or like spoof off of your idea or something. And if I feel like I need to spend money to ensure something before sending it to you, that's probably a red flag that I shouldn't be sending it to you. So that is my thing on trust. You have to have it. It's great if you are in a writing community for a bit and you get to know somebody a bit before you say, hey, I'm looking for critique partners. I've seen you share some of your work. I've shared some of mine in the same circles that we're in, and I think that we could help each other. Do you want to like have a meeting and see what we both want out of this partnership, and if that might be something that's advantageous for both of us, is my advice. Like, I wouldn't suggest just plucking someone off of Twitter or plucking someone off of AuthorTube and saying, hey, I like your energy, let's be CPs, because it is the relationship. So like energy matters, but it's also a professional relationship. So there are some like guidelines that you might want to put in place as to what you're looking for in that person and what you want to get out of that relationship, as well as what you can get into it. And so you should know that person where trust is sort of already established with that person. I just said a lot. KaShay, anything to add?
So I to kind of like, I guess, give like examples of what you just said in your trust. That's kind of what I want, that's what I want to add on to, because I did in a lot of the situations with my critique partners kind of like just jump into it because I didn't know. And so I'm like getting around these people, and like I'm in this new group of AuthorTube, and I am, the group that I like came in with was a group of already like established authors, meaning that they'd already published something in some form. And I, at this point, had not, like, outside of like a poem when I was in high school getting published on, so, stuff like that, like nothing big or anything that mattered. And so I was like, okay, well, they were like, hey, we do these critique sessions once a week, and you submit your manuscript, and then like, you'll read it out loud, and we'll give feedback on like, the pacing and all that kind of stuff. And so what I found was it was a great learning experience. One, I realized I did not read in any of these other people's genre. So I knew conventions of stuff, but like there were like fantasy, but at the time that I started, I'd only read like N.K. Jemisin fantasy. And because I'd read N.K. Jemisin fantasy, my like taste for fantasy is very high caliber. Like, it's NK. Like, if that's your introduction to fantasy, you are expecting a lot if you read anybody after her. That's just the truth of what it is. And so I was like, I'm not vibing with this. Also, this is me and Britt talking. So there was only one other Black person, or no, there were two other Black people in this situation. And a lot of times the criticisms that came from the people who are not Black about things were cultural. And so that was something else that I did not know, or was not like, I knew, but like wasn't thinking of in this joining the critique partner process. So then I was like, okay, well, I will find, I'll kind of make my own critique group out of the people that I write with. Like, we would just, get on privately and just write for hours together. And so this started out great because we were all like sharing our things. And then I realized very soon that like some of us were more dedicated and ready than others. And so in this situation, it would be like, I always have something new to bring. I always have something, and nobody else would, or one other person would. And so then I felt like, dang, like I'm monopolizing everybody's time. Like there's no give and take. And whether that made them feel some type of way or not, it made me feel some type of way. And that was another like, okay, a learning situation. So then when I got to the 3 critique partners that I have now, and I love them. Loved my, my second group of critique partners. That first group was off, but the second group, like, loved them too. But they're more like writing buddies than they are critique partners. And so my critique partners now, I will be honest, the only one of them who's anything I had any idea of what their writing was before we became critique partners was Britt. And that's because Britt had her Tales of Eliza Black on her channel. And so like you know, you could read this. Also at the time my Penelope's Curve was out. So like I don't know if she did read it, but it was something there that she could read. So like for me and her, for on my end, it was like, okay, I like this person's writing style. I like the way they tell stories. And between for them and then the other two that I have, Dejana and Tash, what happened was the way that I saw them talk about their writing, the way I saw them put effort and work into their writing, and the way that when they would talk about their stories were so unique and so specific that I know that no matter what happens, whatever we share, they could never write my book, I could never write theirs. And I think to me that was where like trust is really really big, because I have critique partners whose writing voice is so distinct, it is so them, that I couldn't tell that story. Like I love Britt's work, and like Britt has heard my, like our ideas, they're like so vast and big but so different, so very different. And it's always like I'll hear like a story of hers and I'll be like, I would have never thought of that. Like I would have never thought of that. And I think that when talking about the trust in a CP, a good way to have that, so you're not, like you said, like I gotta pay to have this registered and all this other stuff, is find somebody who has a loud writing voice. Because if they have a loud writing voice, no matter how much you like their story, there's no way you could take theirs. And in saying that, develop a loud writing voice yourself. Like, right, like make sure that your story is a story that nobody else could tell. Like Britt knows the premise of the book that I want to be querying at the end of the year, and like I guarantee you somebody else has thought about it, but in the way that I want to tell the story and develop it, and like the plan that I have for the story, you ain't thought of that. You ain't thought of that. Like you haven't, because it comes from me, it comes from my mind. And I think part of the distrust in CPs also comes from not trusting yourself and your voice, right? Because again, like people share ideas all the time. Like all the best writers have critique partners.
Yeah.
Right? Like when like if you think about, if you're being really honest and you think about how books work, all those books that get all the accolades on the back cover before they come out, a good portion of those are other writers who they've connected with, and hey, read this. Let's talk about this. Before The City We Became came out, N.K. Jemisin and Neil Gaiman were having live like talks about the book, and him like talking about what he liked and what he, you know, what he felt when he read it. And it's like, the book's not out. So that's somebody else that we know. Neil Gaiman is a prolific writer. We know that if he writes something, even if, and not to say it's not good, like, but even if it was bad, he has such a big following that people are gonna buy it because of who he is, right? So if there was any way for someone to feel like, hey, this could be a bad situation, if I like, that's one of those, right? Someone bigger, someone has a bigger platform, because at this time, like, she was building her platform, she's big, you know, now, because it's like after those years, but at the same time, it's still people finding her and finding her and finding her, right? And so, because I want to say, she said the City We Became was the first like big deal that she got for a book when it came out. Like the ones that she got for the other ones were just smaller amounts, and when she got the
which is crazy,
right? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, because I want to say
Trilogy is already a masterpiece, and that was the first one that she released, not that she wrote, but that was published. I'm like, how is this not already
the 3 Hugos for the Broken Earth trilogy? And it's crazy because like and I know we'll link it in the bottom, but like you can find this information out because of LL McKinney's publishing paid me. And that's where she talks about like the only book I feel like the only book she doesn't mention is The City We Became, because it was such a greater thing, but she had to win, right? Because had she not won those awards, those books are still fantastic, but had she not won those awards, you wouldn't have known who her name was. And so I feel like I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but just when we get to this, all this to say that trust in a CP also comes in trust in yourself and in your writing. Like if you don't trust your voice and your writing, you're going to have a distrust of whoever you send your work to. That's just going to be a thing. And I think that that's something that, you know, you need to focus on, but you also need to trust the person that you're sending. And for me, that was finding people whose writing voice was just as loud as mine, so that that way I felt comfortable. And then also I feel like in that, because of that, my CPs challenge me. They challenge me because they're so loud and their thoughts are so strong that it's like when there's something that they have like an issue with, it bothers me and it sticks with me, and it makes me want to like think out that problem and think out how to fix that, because I know that they're not bringing anything to me willy-nilly, right? And I think again, another difference between a CP and a beta reader, right? Like with your CP, because your relationship is what it is, the things that they tell you aren't working, they mean more, they matter more. So yeah,
That part is so important. When KaShay tells me that something, I have had people like read bits of my story, and if they say something that doesn't make sense, I'm like, you don't get it. If KaShay says that something doesn't make sense, I'm like it causes more action. I'm like, let me check my notes. Is the date off? Is her motivation off? Like I'm going back through all the charts and the scene inventories and whatever, because I trust KaShay as a critique partner, that she does understand the premise of the story. She does understand what this character is doing, if that's been made available to her in the story. And I know that she hasn't said that without going back herself to make sure, did I miss something? And in doing that, she was like, no, I don't see this here. And I feel like you wanted this to happen, but it's not reflected in the text, right? So there's a different level of choice, and you expect a different level of work that goes into each and every comment, so that when you see each and every comment, you're not like, maybe she just forgot that this happened. No, they went back and checked to make sure, and they're saying, this is not here. Here are some ways you might change that. Beta readers also are not going to give you suggestions about how you might improve a particular sentence. Like, they're not doing that kind of labor, right? So to pivot, or rather to move into, we're talking about the trust of that you have in that relationship, but that develops over time. And so how do you grow a relationship with a CP? And I want to say again, it's a professional relationship, which is not to say that every communication that I send to KaShay is an email that starts off with "Good morning, KaShay," and ends with "Regards, Britt the Writerly." That's not our relationship.
First off, not Brit the Writerly. I had to come on mute because I was like, Brit the Writerly. First off, I would have like, okay, don't ever send that again. If I would have seen that in an email, I'd be like, okay. So I know we like adults and being professional, but like Brit the, I love it though, because that would totally be a you thing to do though.
It would. I would sign an email like that if I was really into myself at the moment, as I often am. But it's not that, right? Like, I text KaShay, I call her on her cell phone. Like, we that is our relationship. But you set up. Yeah, I send her long voice messages as well. I do. But here's the thing. But KaShay and I are also friends, right? And so if you have a critique partner who is like, y'all are not really friends, you're more just like, we are only critique partners, then you need to ask them, how would you prefer I communicate with you? For my other critique partners that I've had, I have had a critique partner who I have her number, but it's just to say like, hey, I'm running late to this meeting. I'll be online in a second. And then most of the communication that we have beyond that is pretty much email, because we were really just critique partners, and we still had that relationship of like, oh, this you don't get this, okay, well, let me go back in, right? But it doesn't mean that just because you're critique partners, you have a really, really great critique partner relationship, that you're friends, because the critique partner relationship is a professional one. And so how do you grow that? Two things that you need to grow that critique partner relationship are mutuality and consistency. For instance, me and KaShay, and we're using each other because we're here together. I am in right now the We Need Diverse Books revision workshop. Number one, KaShay is the one who recommended me to even apply to that. And I was like, I'm not gonna do it. And KaShay knows, like I have a strong writerly voice and speakerly voice, but I can be really indecisive. And so I was like, I'm gonna do it. And then 2 days later, I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not ready. I couldn't have like, and so she was just like, do it. Just do it. And so I did.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is a little break for like those older people in the crowd, because if you were listening to what she just said, all I heard was do it for the vine. I ain't gonna do it. Do it for the vine. I ain't gonna do it. Like that's all I heard when you were saying that. And I was like, first of all, I would love to know where that little girl is now. You know how we always get the I went viral.
Yeah.
I'm curious to where her and her sister are now in life. But that's what it made me think of, because it literally was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. And then you did it, and I loved it. So,
Amen. Do it for the book. I ain't gonna do it. Do it for the book. I ain't gonna do it. I did it. And I got in. And KaShay was one of the first calls that I made because I was like, I got in. Right. But that's also like professionally we're growing together. So when I got into that workshop, we talked, and KaShay actually is the one that was like, do you need us to take a break on exchanging pages for the duration of this 6-month revision workshop? And I immediately agreed because mutuality. I don't have time to revise this manuscript and read the work of other critique partners in the program, because the program encourages you to create writing communities and make new connections and form critique partner groups with the cohort in the program. So I can't read, and I have two, and they're amazing, but I can't read their work, revise my work all before the end of this program, and do all the other things I'm doing in life, right? And also be accountable to like reading KaShay's pages every week, or even responding to the feedback that she gives me for my work every week. And so because I can't be responsible to her, I can't make her responsible to me. I can't say, hey, can you read my pages, but I don't have time to read yours, right? And so part of growing the trust in that relationship is mutuality, that I trust KaShay to say, hey, I can't read your stuff right now. Can we just be writing buddies for a bit and like not? And we've done that before. And she trusts me to say, I am swamped right now, whether it's because of other writing commitments or commitments for my dissertation. I can't do anything right now. Can we take a couple of weeks off and be writing buddies, right? Like there's that trust that we will always say when we don't have the ability to reciprocate out of respect for the labor that the other person is doing for you. And then, so that's the mutuality bit. And then consistency. Meet when you say you're going to meet. If you meet once a week, meet once a week. If that is getting away from you, you need to step back to meeting bi-weekly, meet bi-weekly. If it's once a month, it's once a month. But whatever you say you're going to do it, because if you don't engage your critique partner, how are you going to grow the relationship? Whenever y'all say you're going to meet, do that. Whenever you say you're going to give feedback, do that. And by growing the consistency, then you get more comfortability with each other, right? So like those two things are super important to growing a critique partner relationship. KaShay, do you have anything to add, or your own sort of like tips?
I was gonna agree. Like, in every situation with the three that I work with now, the very first conversation was, how often do you want to meet? What are you expecting? I think if you're not setting expectations for that relationship from jump, you're going to have problems. One of the things that like my uncle used to say growing up was like, failing to plan is planning to fail. Part of the critique partner relationship is you saying, hey, I know that I need to have this relationship to better myself as a writer and to better this manuscript. And so if you're going to engage in that, you need to have goals for that situation, and that needs to be expressed to your critique partner, right? Because part of why I encouraged Britt to do this, one, first thing I saw it and it was like, ooh, I'd love to do this. Who does not have a finished manuscript? Me, right? But my critique partner does. And I know that the story that my critique partner was working on was one that was like, hey, we're doing like all that we can together, but I also know I'm not published. I also know I don't primarily write YA. And so I think this could be a good opportunity for my critique partner. And whenever she would be like, I'm gonna quit, my thing is, I mean, but you never know what could happen, right? Like if you don't get in, you don't get in. But if you apply, you can at least know that like you tried, right? And especially when we were like, it's only the first 10 pages, like, hey, you don't gotta send the whole thing right now, just I'm send that. And again, we're friends, so that was an easier conversation to have, and I'm like, yeah, do that. But knowing part of a critique partner relationship and growing it is learning that other person, right? And it's not all about it's not simply all about just writing, because I feel like all my critique partners, like, they know my personality, right? So they know if I'm not trying my hardest at something, or they know if I'm not giving it as much as I am, or they know, because they know me, hey, you need a break, right? Like those are conversations like, hey, you've been sending me the same thing, or you working on something else, like, because sometimes you need that. And that's a part of a partnership, right? Like, so when you think of partners, like, they don't let each other fall, right? That's a big thing about partners, is they're holding each other accountable. They expect something out of them, and they give something back in return, right? Like we're saying, like a beta reader situation is really a lot more like one-way relationship. Like, it's not a mutual like give and take. Like, it's kind of like arc readers. Like, you give them a book, they give you a response. Like, that's more so what it is. Now you might find beta readers that turn into critique partners and they give you more, but if that's a blessing. That's the exception, that's not the rule. Like, that is like the one thing to understand. And I think about you were saying about consistency is, again, that was one of the issues with the second group, was like there wasn't any consistency. We weren't meeting regularly, or we'd set a time and then something would happen. People's lives happen. That's a thing. That just means that you both have to be willing to reevaluate the situation and if it works. And I think the other thing is communication. Like, I think that's super, super duper important. I know for me and Britt, like, a lot of it uh is just the way that we talk to each other in general helps so much with the book, right? Like, so if I'm saying something and it's a negative thing about the book, because she knows me so well and we talk so much, she knows I'm not talking about her. She knows I'm not saying she's a bad writer. She knows I'm not saying the story is bad. I'm saying, hey, let's make this better. And I think that's an important part of the communication of the relationship.
And I will say, I know KaShay better now than I did when we first started being critique partners, right? And so the thing you have to be okay with is those first uncomfortable meetings, because now I expect KaShay to completely overturn my entire life, to read a scene and be like, so I thought it was great, and I'm glowing and I'm basking in it, and I'm like, I'm amazing. And she's like, I just had a question. And when KaShay has a question, you're pretty much over, right? That's just the beginning of the end of your scene being solid. And that's okay, because I know when this whip is published, ain't nobody gonna have nothing to say that I ain't heard before. And that's what you want. Every time, without fail.
I swear, like, he loves you so much. Like, you started clapping and stuff. He's like, oh, okay,
Is that friend?
Boy, all right. Hi, Cleo. Yeah, it's your turn. Okay.
Yeah, she was like, well, Titan got some love, so
yeah,
why?
Oh, no, not in my mouth.
Right in the mouth.
You I
am
right. Black, Damon. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't. Like, why did you go for that?
Because you let your guard down.
That was exactly
you
what
let your guard down.
Okay, yeah, I see. You're here. Let me show you some love.
Let me just try it.
Yeah.
But when KaShay says that she has a question, it's going to be a really good question that in addressing, you may have to undo some things that you have done very well, right? And the first time, I know that now, and now I appreciate it. The first time she did it, I was like, and my face was so like, downcast is not the word. It was more like expressionless. And KaShay was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine." And she was like, "I mean, I think it's the good story." Yeah, me too. Like, it was just, she was like, "You know what? Let me find some other things that I like to, soothe your feelings." Right. But we had to be okay working through those first moments of like, if we're going to grow together, everything ain't going to always be praise. And we have to appreciate that about each other. And what we're talking about communication, segueing into that, you got to know how your critique partner gives feedback, right? And so that's part of trust, but that's also just part of like knowing how they talk. KaShay and I, we are in our, when we're speaking, it's more conversational. We can hear each other's tone. But when we're writing, our tone can be way more direct. Highlight, this doesn't make sense. Highlight, clunky. Highlight, awkward. Highlight, LOL. Right, there are those comments too. But like, we're very direct in our feedback when it's written, because there's more things to get through. We understand we're just trying to get through and engage, and I don't need to like couch this in softness and be like, I understand what you mean, but this sentence is actually just a little bit, perhaps possibly clunky, and you may want to fix that if you have time later today. Right? Like, I ain't gotta do all that. I can just say this is not working.
Right.
And we know that about each other, so we don't read it and are like, clunky. Yes,
Right.
it's clunky. See to that.
And we also know we're going to have a live chat where we can, hey, I didn't understand what you meant about this comment or this sentence that you spoke about, right? Because
Right.
that's the thing that we do. Like, if I don't understand something just from the email or just from the notes, I feel comfortable being like, hey, I don't know what you miss. And sometimes, like, for both of us, there have been things that we didn't catch or we read, but they didn't stick out to us. Like, it was something our brains like glossed over in the story. Like, I remember there was something in the one that you're working on now, and you were like, no, like, I addressed that. And I was like, you did? I went right past it because there was so much action and all the other things, I lost it. And so, like, it's one, being able to understand that your critique partner might miss something, like, that's a thing, and being okay with that. Right. And then two, like, being okay with the fact that your critique partner is better than you in certain areas.
Gotta be.
Catch things. Like, Britt is much better than me at grammar, at setting up sentences and stuff like back to the first meeting when she went through it, and I was like, so I know like commas and stuff go certain places and whatnot, but like, does the story work? Like, I mean, I get that, okay, there should have been a tag there, but like, come on, like, are you following the story, right? But now, like, I appreciate it because it's like, I realize that those things, even though in my head it's like, oh, it's something I'll fix later or whatever, if I would start doing them initially, it wouldn't be something I'd have to go back and do, right? So I've gotten better at doing those. And also, I've learned from reading editors or agents and editors talking on Twitter or doing live streams that those are bigger things to them than you realize. When they see or get a manuscript that does have a lot of grammatical punctuation errors, it turns them off, even if the story is good, because they feel like there's more work that they have to do with you as a writer, even though that might not necessarily be the case, right? And so it took going through it a couple times and like, okay, she's pointed this out like multiple times. What is it that I'm doing wrong? Okay, so when I go back and I send it next time, I know to do that. Like me, when I write, I don't ever format. So I'm always having to format right before I send it. It'd be all over the place. It do. I've gotten better, but like in the beginning, it was way worse. Way worse. But I needed a critique partner that was good at that, who understood that, who has that convention of being able to, know how and fix it. And like, it wouldn't be what I thought I wanted, right? Like, I thought I wanted an explanation for every change. But like, as we started going, I realized why there wasn't an explanation, why she was just changing it. Because it's just like, you just need to see it. You need to see what you're doing. and see where it's wrong, and then once you start to visualize it and see it, it does. Now maybe that might not have been her like thing in her mind when she did it, but that's how it translated to me as the CP. And I feel like that's something else, like, again, that you didn't realize or you don't know or you don't think is going to be as important, and it helps you. It helps you. It's just one of my favorite things about when I send you my work is like I know, like, hey, I'm gonna learn something about how this punctuation is supposed to be. Hey, this sentence don't, like sentences supposed to have like a few things in them to be considered a sentence. Thank you. I appreciate you, Britt. I do.
Did I say that to you?
No, it's not. It's you haven't ever said it like that. Okay. It just be the way that like you'll write something and I'll like hear, that's not a sentence, right? Like that's it.
Yeah, like, and you'll get that. Like you will have a small CP on your shoulder who was like, so for me, so yes, I have a Bachelor of Arts in English, and my father's an English teacher. And I'm also like have been a TA and teaching my own class right now. So like I just approach things from a grading perspective, just like even if I'm not grading yet, I just see all the things. And I won't mark every single one for a lot of time, but I will mark enough for KaShay to see a pattern for her to be able to say, okay, what is this thing, right? And if she asks me about it, I can say, well, yeah, like as a reader, I can't tell where you want me to pause, and where you pause has to do with where the emphasis is placed, and therefore that guides how you want me to read this things as a reader. If she wants to have that conversation, we could, if she didn't understand the pattern, but I trust her to ask me the question. And right. And so if it continues to happen and I as the CP am seeing that, then I can say, hey, KaShay, are my notes making sense on this part? Because I keep seeing it. And I'm not sure if I'm not being clear or if you want to talk about it more. Like both of you need to be paying attention to how you were growing over the weeks and months, and how your critique partner is growing over the weeks and months. If I feel like my notes aren't helping KaShay in the spirit of mutuality, I'm not doing my part, right? So KaShay knows that she can trust me to mark where all the comma splices are. And if this sentence is like 5 lines, what she knows that I'm going to mark certain things to do with like sentence construction. I know that KaShay is going to alert me to if my trail is off. Like if I say something and it's like, you've never mentioned this before. We're aware of this, right? Like this doesn't, or this does not make sense for a character. Or KaShay is very good at like age appropriateness. She will tell me in a second, like, this girl is 16 years old because she should be smarter than this, which is my favorite thing. Like, that is my favorite thing about KaShay. Like, when I send something to her, I know I'm going to know, are my characters being intelligent enough? Because I feel like there's a YA convention where we allow teenagers to be, like, silly for no reason. And it's like, some of these kids are really smart and not just clever at getting into trouble. Some of them are good at avoiding trouble altogether, and I'm not seeing that rep. I know that I won't have to worry about that with KaShay. If I have a silly teen, it's going to be because I chose to write them that way, and there will be a reason why, but it's not going to be because KaShay didn't let me know. For that age, they could know better and therefore do better.
I think like we talk about that all the time. Like, we hate that the writer will tell us how smart this person is, and we'll just watch them make dumb decisions. And I think when you come to a critique partner situation, before you ask, you do need to think about what you're good at and what you're bringing to the table. Like, I know for me, I know the best part about it is I'm going to dig into your story. Like, I'm going to know your story. I'm going to know your characters. I'm going to ask you about them. I'm going to be like, hey, is this the personality that you want to show? Hey, is this how I'm supposed to feel about this character at this point? Because this is how I'm feeling. Is this what you want? Is this what you expected? Like, that I know is my thing. I know I'm not gonna give you nothing on punctuation and grammar and stuff. Like, I mean, I'll be like, hey, yo, this tense is wrong if I see it, and hey, there's a word. Like, if I see it, but most importantly, like, I'm gonna be like, hey, no, in chapter 1, you said this about this character. We are in chapter 13, and she ain't done this for the last 12 chapters. Where did this come from? Did something happen? Am I missing something? Like, and like, I think knowing what you are good at is only going to help you find the right CP, because then you're going to know what you can do and how you can add value to that partnership. And so I think like one, like I remember when we were talking, like that was one of the first things you did say was like, yeah, no, I have a bachelor's in English, and so like if I'm critiquing, I could do this. Is this something that you would be okay with? And I said, yeah. I didn't know what I was asking for, but I said, yeah, when I said it, it happened. But it was also like a, hey, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at. So this is what I'm bringing to the table, right? So
Right. And I should say, it's not copy editing level grammar, right? Because that would make no sense. The things are gonna get cut. It's in development, so it doesn't make sense for me or other CPs that you may be working with to give you like giving you the grammar structure of every single sentence. It's when that starts to disrupt your understanding as a reader that you need to flag it. And so for me going in, I knew, because I had worked with myself in my own writing for long enough to know myself as a writer very well. I knew when it comes to revision, I am Edwina Scissorhands. If you need to cut 2,000 words, we gonna cut 2,500. I got it, right? Like I will take that dialect that doesn't need to be there. Need to cut this so the conversation moves faster. Like I'm good at helping with like issues of flow and tightening of stories. I can do that, which is why I look at the grammar, because most of the time the grammar is why something is clunky, right? But then I can explain it to my critique partners as, I'm not being a grammarian to make you feel illiterate. I'm trying to help you tighten your story and the voice of your characters, right? And so explaining what your strengths are and how that can be useful to your critique partner will help them know, is that something that you think will be valuable to you right now, so that they can grow in it, and then you can grow in whatever they're saying that they can help you with. But that communication of what are your strengths and how do you communicate them into critique, that is only going to help you um, establish the best critique partnership. Because just because y'all are writing buddies doesn't mean y'all should be CPs.
right.
If y'all are good at the exact same things, great, be writing buddies. But if you have nothing to learn from that person, then it's not going to be, again, mutual, and the labor and the growth. So that's what you definitely want. So that's all our list. In case you are just like skipping to this part of the video and want a summary, a critique partner is someone with whom you exchange work, someone who you can grow from and who can grow from you. They're going to give you more extensive feedback. They're going to talk to you more often. It is a professional relationship where you all are deciding to grow together in your writing practice, in the craft of writing. A beta reader is someone who you give your unpublished manuscript to offer feedback. Now, the beta reader is going to be like a reader of the genre, so they're going to be able to offer you a readerly perspective of the genre conventions, what's enjoyable. There's no expectation that they're going to give you anything on the craft of writing, give you suggestions on how to improve, be open to reading the revised version. It's still professional, but the expectations are way more lax than the relationship of that with a critique partner. So that's the difference. So they're two totally different relationships with different expectations. If you're talking about how to grow the relationship with the critique partner, you want to really be sure that the mutuality is there and the consistency is there. Again, that you can help each other, not just one helping one without anything to learn from the other, and that you are doing what you say you're going to do on a routine, and that you're holding to it. So you have time to learn that critique partner as a person, as a writer, and as a reviewer. How do they speak when they're writing, and can you follow what they're saying? I think that's about everything that we said in a summary. Right.
Yeah, I think the only other thing was just like communication, just making sure that you're communicating everything as effectively as you can. And the biggest thing to know going into a CP relationship is yourself. You need to know
Yep.
yourself, your strengths, and your writing before you bring wanting to be a critique partner to somebody else. Because if you don't, it's gonna already have like a rocky foundation to start. And that comes in with, like we said earlier, like the trusting. Like you're going to trust the other person more when you know that your writing voice is strong. When you feel like it's not, it makes it harder to trust someone else to give you good feedback and to trust the feedback that they give you.
100%. 100%. So I hope that this video has been helpful for those of you who are wanting to find CPs but don't really know how to do it and don't want to endanger your writing in the process. I hope this has been a helpful sort of guide of what to look for, how to prepare properly, etc., etc. If you made it this far in the video, comment. I don't know. I just resonated with what KaShay said about you're not going to trust your CP if you don't trust yourself. So if you made it this far in the video, comment trust yourself equals trust your CP. Like that's just like, that's a message. If you trust yourself, you will trust your CP far more. So if you made this far in the video, trust yourself equals trust your CP. All right. Thank you all so much for rocking with us on this episode of Writerly Conversations. We will see y'all next month. Lord will, creek don't rise. Bye bye.
Bye. You gonna say bye too? Don't try to kiss me before she do it again. Like, no, we're not. See? Oh, now.